Hello everyone, so today we're going to be doing a little drawing showing how we can draw movement. So this is an example of one which I've done using our little maquette man which we have already made. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our little bendy maquette man or woman which will bend in any direction you want them to go, and I'm going to put them into a position. So I'm going to have him with his arm up in the air, another one in the air like so, a little bend in the leg, a little bend in that leg. I'm going to take my red pen, okay, so where he's stood, I'm just going to draw around the outline of the person's body. So I'm going to go as closely as I can to the lines which are on here. I'm just going to draw around, all the way around, making sure I get every bit of the body covered, so I'll get a nice template. I'll come round over that leg. Ooh, try not to move in. I'm going to come up. I'm going to come round again to the top of his hand. Go up around the head. Around that hand there. Joining back up to the start. So carrying on, I'm going to keep his body in the same position. I'm going to give his head a little tilt this time and move the arm down so we can track which way it's moving. So that arm's going to move up a tad. I'm going to slightly move his leg and bend his knee a little. And I'm going to slightly bend this leg out as well. And exactly the same as we did before, we're just going to retrace around the outline of the body. So I'm going to start off where I started. I'm going to slowly go around, trying to keep tight as I can. There we go, so we're drawing all the way around. Doing it nice and lightly. There we go. And I'm going to move around this side here. Following the new movement, the new line of where the arm's going. All the way around. Up. Around the head. Round, and back to where I started. Okay, so I've done two tracing outlines with the red pen. I'm going to pop that away, and I'm now going to get my green pen. Now I'm going to move the body around again. So this time I'm going to rotate it so it's like he stood on one leg. I've got one arm up in the air, one arm straight, slight bend in there. I'm going to change the angle of his head this time because remember all the body parts move. And I'm going to bring this arm down here. Okay, so exactly as we did before, I'm going to carry on just tracing around. Okay, so I've got my green pen this time. In fact, that's not working too well, so I'm going to take my purple pen. I'm just going to carry on going around, following the contours of our little man's body, his arm all the way around there, and on to the foot. And round. Going up around the body, and last little bit around the arm. And we're back to where we started. So much as we did before, I'm just going to slowly move his movement on a little bit. So I'm going to go to there. So he's more standing up now. I'm going to bring this arm down, straighten it out, and I'll lift this one up. Okay. So exactly the same as I've been doing, we're just going to trace around again. So off we go. So what we're left with when I'm finished with this is a trace, like a recording of all the different movements that little man has made, as if you've took loads of photographs and you've got them all layered up on top of each other, and it'd show how his body's moved through time. So we're coming up and around. That's it. I'm getting a little bit on top of myself there, and I'm going around. I'm following. There we go. And I'm nearly back to the start. And there we go. Okay. So I'm now going to add one final colour for this. Okay, so I'm going to take my orange pen this time. And I'm going to go for something a little different. So I'm keeping his body shape kind of in the same place all of the time, but I'm just changing the hips. So I'm just going to shift his leg so that's slightly bent in. It's like he's clicking his heels in the air. There we go. That hand's going up in the air. This one's down here, so he's keeping his balance. And just gently just tilt his head to one side as well. So off we go again, exactly the same way as we did before. So he's coming up and round. Oh, it's not an orange pen, it's a black pen, but that doesn't matter. Okay, so he's following it all the way around. Oh, that's slightly moving a little bit, so I have to watch that. Let's go around. Here we go, we're back to the start. So I'm gently just going to shift his head around again. I'm going to give that arm another little bit of movement. I'm going to shift that leg around this way, I think, this time. And this one's going to come down a little bit. And his arm's going to come out to the side. And then I'm just going to start on the shoulder where I started last time. I'm just going to move it all the way around. There we go, nearly there. I'm doing this quite quickly, so it's not going to be as accurate as I'm sure you guys can get it. Just really take your time. You can get a really good, nice outline. This little maquette that we made. There we go, we're back to the start. So you should now have something which looks a little bit like that. So we've managed to record 6 different bits of movement there. And if you want, I mean, I've got a pen here. You can exaggerate the gaps in between the movements. So I'm just going to put a little bit of green to outline the spaces where there's no body shape in there. So we just slowly start to highlight the areas where there's been no movement in the drawing. And it's just a nice way of showing movement again. Just with your pen, it's a nice way of decorating it. There we go. So there you go. Enjoy. Hello there again. So this is our second drawing that we're going to make using our little maquette man, which we've made. Okay. So last time we made a drawing using just pens on paper, and tracing round. This time we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to be using the watercolour packs, which are in your packs, which all got sent home with you. So this is a similar image, but a little bit different to look at. It's a lot freer, it's a lot looser, and it gives a really nice effect, I think. So what we're going to need to do this, we're going to need our watercolours. We're going to use our maquette. We're going to need a pot of water and a brush. And we're going to, if you've got one of these, it'd be really handy a nice big brush to wet all of our paper, but if you don't have one of those, don't worry, because you can use a sponge and just dab a little water on there as well, and it'll work just as well. So this is the example that I made just to show you before we start. We're going to work in a very similar way to how we did the last time we did it, using the pens, just tracing around. But obviously how we make the image is going to be a little bit differently. So I've got a nice piece of thick watercolour paper on there. It's best to get a nice thick piece of paper, as we're going to make this paper quite wet. So if it's really thin paper, it's just going to soak through and it's not going to look good. It might end up sticking to your table, it might stick to your worktop, wherever you're working. So try and get some nice thick paper. So what I'm going to do, the first thing to prepare this, the paper, I'm going to get my water and I'm going to get my large brush. Now I'm just going to give it a nice big brush with the water. We're just going to prepare the paper before we add the watercolour to it. Now I'm not using loads and loads of water. I'm just using enough to make sure all of the paper is quite wet. There's no big pools of water and it's not swimming. I've just gently wet it, like you're basting the top of a loaf of bread or something before you put it in the oven. Okay, so once I've got all that nice and wet, I'm going to grab my Maquette man. Okay, or woman, as we said. Okay, so I'm just going to put it into a nice position and I'm going to place it in the middle of my paper. Now I'm going to get my watercolours. Okay, and I'm going to pick the yellow. So I've got it and I'm going to mix in a little bit there. There's a little bit of green in there, so it's just mixed up a bit of a odd colour yellow, slightly off yellow, so slightly green yellow. Okay, exactly the same as we did before, and you may find this a little bit easier because the paper is wet. The colour which we have on the brush should soak in and give you a nice outline around the man. Okay, so just keep loading it up and you'll have a nice line, and it should be masking off a little bit as well as you're doing it, so you should have quite a clear little image underneath this once we take it all off. Okay, so just exactly the same as before. I'm just following the outlines, following the movements that this person's body is making. I'm just slowly going to take it around like that. Now, as it's watercolour, you can do lots of things, lots of different techniques, so you might want to add some splashes of colour. Remember, we're painting movement here, so all of these little marks will denote movement and things moving. Okay, so I can just add those in around there. Okay, so that's my first colour on there, my slightly off yellow. Now I'm going to move it again. Okay, so I'm going to keep my Maquette where it's been. I'm gently going to move his arm around. I'm going to tilt the head over to one side. I'm going to bring this arm down. I'm going to bend the arm in this time, I think, if I can. Let's see. There we go. So slightly moving in. This leg is going to move down to this position here. And this one, I hope, is going to come down as well. Okay, so we've got no movement this time. So this time, I'm going to go for some red. So I'm going to, nice bit of red mixed up in there. And I'm slowly just going to go around the outline of my figure again. Okay, don't have to be too exact with this. Just follow the outline of the contours of this little Maquette. So as you can see, the paper's nice and wet. So the colour is bleeding through. Once it bleed, you don't have to worry about it being too exact. There we go, so I'm just gently working around, adding lots of this red around. There we go. And again, we had some splashes. We can add some more splashes this time. Nice vibrant red colour going over. Okay, so I'm going to add a third colour. I think a third colour will probably do it on this because we don't want to get too busy and the image getting lost by adding too much. So it's always good to know when to stop so we don't lose what it is that we're trying to achieve when we're doing the painting, because otherwise we'll just end up with a big brown splodge, and we don't want that. So, and I'm just going to move the legs around. So he's doing a little jig this time, little jig. And I think I've got a red and yellow on there. I might go for a blue this time, or maybe a bluey green perhaps. Yeah, I'll go for that. So let's see, I'm just going to mix this up. Kind of teal colour, this one, so it's slightly blue-green. There we go. So it's a really strong colour. It's probably the strongest we've got, so that's really going to stand out on this. Okay. So again, just following them outlines. See, the paper's drying up a little bit now. It's not as wet as when I first put the yellow on. But the colour's still bleeding quite nice. It's picking up that outline all the way around. There we go, we're going around. Following the contour of that head. I'll get the arm in. Around the outside. There we go, all the way out to the end of his toe. A little bit more, I think I've got a little bit to do under here. And then again, just going to add some little flicks of colour on there. Okay, so that's the 3 colours which I'm going to add to this version of this drawing using our little Maquette man. Okay, so we'll take that off there. That is what we're left with at the end. I've got a little pool there, so I'm just going to soak that up a little. Okay, so we don't lose the shape of what it is that we're doing. Now once this is dry, you could, for example, take a dark pen, use this one as an example. You can start working in and bringing out the figures. You could place the maquette back on top, kind of in the positions which he was, and you could do some drawings again from that. You can really work into these drawings. You could actually have facial features on there. You could have a nose, a mouth. You could really start trying to pick the hands out if the person was wearing clothing. You can maybe put that on there as well in a nice little sketchy style. So lots and lots of things you can do with this. It's a nice base to do other drawings and paintings on. Okay, so there we go. Thank you. Enjoy.